Right, let's try that again. Hello everyone, apologies for that. We had a problem with the microphone. Seems to be working okay now. If everyone can hear me, if they could just put something in the comments please, telling me they could hear me before I use up all my good material again. My name's Mark. I own and run the Purple Penny, a coin shop in the northern suburbs of Adelaide. My wife Catherine also owns and runs it. We had a very busy week last week. There was, of course, a mint release on Thursday. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but there was a lot of buying and selling going on, a lot of people in shop, and Saturday was extraordinarily busy. I can't quite believe how busy it was on Saturday. So I thought what we would do first is invite a special guest over here just to talk about something. If you'd like to come over here. Welcome.
Hi everyone.
Welcome, Catherine. Welcome.
Just given the mint release last week of the FIFA World Cup coins and the 30th anniversary of the silver dollars, I was putting together a display in the shop of all our kangaroo coins, and lo and behold I came across this coin from the Perth Mint in 2010, which just interestingly had a kangaroo. It's a 1 ounce silver, a kangaroo and a soccer player on it as well. So that was sort of my featured product for the week in the shop, in the cabinet, just to have a bit of conversation and laugh, just to make life just a bit interesting.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that with us.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I know people like me to pop in, so here I am popping in and popping out again.
Thank you for popping in.
Okay.
Okay, see ya. Right. We'll just say a few hellos to people before we jump into the news for the day. Thank you everyone for joining in and persevering with me while I stumbled through the technical issues. Hello Cam, hello Peter for try number 2, Patrick, Adam, Michelle, who else is there? Justin, Bronte, Brett, Chris, Rob, Ray, Van, Brandon, Gwen. Yes, it was good to have Catherine dropping in, and Charles. Hello everyone, thank you for joining in today. And hello John, and hello Ash. Right, so as I said, we did have new releases on Thursday. It went very smoothly. Thursday itself wasn't particularly frantic. We had a lot of online orders, obviously, because the Mint wasn't able to sell through their own website. We had quite a bit of stock available for purchase over the counter. That's all gone. It was all gone by Saturday. Everyone was very happy with what they got. We were happy with the amounts that we got. I think we could have asked for a bit more, but I think we were pretty pleased with what we got in the end. All the stuff was here on time. Quality of the packaging was good, so no complaints. The RAM did a good job with the release this time. So I hope you got what you were after. The FIFA half-ounce silver coins were, of course, the hardest ones to get. But my pick of the products would be probably the 10th ounce kangaroo or the frosted unk kangaroo in the slab holder. I thought they were both nice looking products. I don't usually go in for gold coins, but I thought the 10th ounce coin looked quite good. It looked like a little penny, a little gold penny. Brandon's asking if we got the silver scorpion. No, that wasn't offered to us. I think that was a custom minting made for a company that's in Hong Kong, and I think most of them went over there. That's what I've been told. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I've been told. Right, Adelaide Coin Expo coming up, first full weekend in October. If you're in Adelaide, do come along. We're looking at somewhere between 26 and 30 dealers there. The hall is full. We're hoping that we'll have some very big news in the next week or two. The signage has started arriving. So if you are in Adelaide, do make sure you keep that weekend free. So that's October 8th and 9th. And if you're thinking about coming over from interstate, it is worth a visit. It's close to accommodation on North Terrace. It's a good place, Adelaide. It's well worth a visit. Fantastic news here, and I did see this the other day. It popped up on my feed, but thank you to Michelle for sharing the picture with me as well, the article with me. A Roman military medal has been found in a an auxiliary camp along the line of what was to become Hadrian's Wall in the northern parts of England, and there's the medal there. So it was found in the fort of what's called Vindolanda, which was an auxiliary fort which was located near where Hadrian's Wall was built. Now the Vindolandan camp was built sort of in the late 1st century, so AD 75 to AD 90, and Hadrian's Wall wasn't built until sort of the early 2nd century, AD 110 to AD 120. So this medal predates the building of the wall, and it is what's called a philera, which is a military decoration. So this is a medal that a legionary would have worn on a leather strap that he wore across his chest on parade days. These medals are extremely unusual because they are made from silver. You can see there it is quite large, and very few of them have survived till today. And this one was found in lovely condition. It was actually encrusted with debris and things like that, but they've cleaned it up, and it's in beautiful condition. And it shows Medusa on the outside there. Medusa was depicted on many Greek and Roman coins, depicted on the armour of Alexander the Great. The symbolism is, the exact reason they use it all the time isn't really known, but the symbolism perhaps has something to do with flight or something like that, because Medusa was often depicted with wings. Of course, Medusa was the mythical Greek creature with snake for hair who could turn people into stone. So what's really interesting about this is because it is so big and it is made of silver, it would have been quite difficult to lose, but it was found on the floor of what they believe were barracks in Vindolanda, so it clearly was lost. Because of course if it wasn't lost, it probably would have been melted down for the metal that it contained. What an amazing find. First, we've been doing these videos for 3 years now, and I've never covered a Roman medal being found before, so clearly a very unusual thing. Right, now I will just relate a bit of a funny story here. As you know, when we get key date coins in here, especially pre-decimal coins, they're usually fake, and that goes doubly so for 1930 pennies. We've probably had several hundred fake 1930 pennies in here, and we did have a gentleman ring us last week who said he was coming in on Saturday morning and had a 1930 penny. I really didn't pay it too much mind because, as I said, they're always fake. Anyway, the gentleman showed up at opening time and pulled out this penny that was wrapped up in a piece of tissue in a plastic bag, and he handed it to me. And at the time, one of our regulars was standing at the counter, a gentleman who knows something about coins, and he said to me later that, Mark, when you looked at the coin, you went red and your hand started shaking. And that was because the second I looked at it, I knew it was real. And it's the first one I've had the opportunity to look at in someone's collection. We've had them in here before, but it's usually dealers bring them in here trying to sell them to us. So I was, I won't say I was flustered, but I was a little bit excited by it. So I did know pretty much immediately as soon as I looked at it that it was real. But I thought today I would just share with you the information that I used just to confirm that the 1930 penny was real. And those of you who are new to pre-decimal coins might not know that the 1930 penny is an important coin because the mintage is so low. It is amongst the lowest mintage of the pre-decimal coins, and it is probably the best known pre-decimal coin. They do sell anywhere from $10,000 upwards, so I thought I would just share with you these pictures that the gentleman let me take of the coin. We didn't buy it. He's unsure about whether he wants to sell it at the moment. But 1930 penny, supposedly a mintage of about 1,000, and the things that I used to confirm that it was real was basically an examination of the obverse and reverse dies, and thanks go to Peter Andrews here for the great article on his website that I have learnt this information from. So the obverse die the obverse being the heads die of the 1930 penny, is what's known as the Indian obverse. So George V pennies were struck with either London obverses or Indian obverses. How you can tell the difference is through the alignment of the N and the colon of OMN colon. So on the obverse, the legend says OMN colon at the top right hand side. You look at the alignment of the last stroke of the N and the alignment of the colon, and if they are pointing at rim beads, then that is an Indian die obverse, Indian obverse die. London obverse dies, the last stroke of the N and the colon point between rim beads. So this is the first thing that I looked at after I'd examined the coin, and I was happy that it looked like a real penny. So I checked that it was an Indian obverse. That's always the first thing that I check. Now, less well known, this is a reasonably well known die variation. Less well known is the reverse die. So the reverse die the reverse dies used of coins during the 1930s. Hang on a second, what's going on there? Oh, I've got the wrong picture, excuse me for 1 second, while I just get the correct picture up. Click, click, click. Sorry about that. No, I've ballsed this up. I've buggered up my slides. So the reverse die of pennies in the 1930s were struck with two variations, and they were known as the London and the Birmingham obverse. Now, the way to determine which one of those you're using is to look at the alignment of A, L, I, A in Australia, and if the A and the L are pointing at denticles, then you have the London die. If they are pointing in between denticles, then you have the Birmingham die. All 1930 pennies were struck with the London die. So these die variations are the things that I was looking for. The other thing to look for is the shape of the zero. The zero on the 1930 penny is quite round if you compare that to a 1920 penny, for example, and I'll just pop that slide up here. If you look just down at the bottom right there, you can see the two zeros there. The real 1930 penny zero is on the left, and it's quite round compared to the 1920 zero on the right there. I did weigh it as well. I also checked it with the XRF to make sure that the bronze looked alright, and as I said, I was quite shocked to see that someone had brought in a real 1930 penny. It probably grades to good fine. It was a nice even colour, and it really was quite exciting to see one of those in the shop. And again, thanks must go to Peter Andrews for the great article on his website, and for just confirming with me later that the pictures I had taken were of a real 1930 penny. Thanks again, Peter. Right, next item of the news. If you are from Colombia, you would know that your police force is corrupt. And one corrupt policeman got his comeuppance last week. He had basically accused a shopkeeper of trading in drugs, and said that if the shopkeeper didn't provide him with a certain amount of money, then he would arrest him. The shopkeeper wasn't able to produce all of the money, so the policeman took the shopkeeper to the police station, threatened him with arrest for several hours, and finally the shopkeeper handed over a little bit more money. But in the meantime, someone else had come in to see the shopkeeper in the police station, and he had reported that policeman. The policeman was arrested while he was sitting in his car, and he chose the interesting approach of swallowing the money that the shopkeeper had given him. So he swallowed somewhere between 8 and 15 banknotes, and became very ill very quickly, and actually had to have the banknotes surgically removed because they weren't going to pass through his system. Ouch, and also yuck. He chose to swallow about $200 worth of banknotes, which isn't very much, but from reading the news articles around the place, this sort of corruption is quite common in Colombia, and apparently a lot of the police force do consider this sort of corruption payments as a supplement to their normal wage. So yeah, don't swallow banknotes, because apparently they don't digest very easily. and you'll have to have them cut out of you, which, as I said, is not only ouch, but it's also yuck. Now, I will just commend the RAM here, who are really trying their best to distribute coins fairly with their new releases. They did have some technical problems with their phone lines last week, but that sounds like they got that sorted out. Of course, they chose not to sell any products through their website. No, Peter, they weren't polymer. They weren't paper either. I think they were a similar material to what US banknotes are. US banknotes aren't paper. They're more of like a fabric, so they wouldn't digest. Anyway, so the Mint is trying their best to distribute these coins fairly, and they chose not to sell them through their website last Thursday and allowed the dealer network to distribute them. And if dealers like us, we did our best to distribute them fairly. And as part of that, they've released some new terms and conditions last week. I won't go into the details of them, but if you get onto their Facebook page and have a look at that, they have put a number of conditions in there to allow them to cancel orders, cancel accounts, prevent duplicate orders, prevent orders going to the same house, prevent drop shipping orders, and all sorts of things. So, I know that they cop a lot of flack, but they are definitely trying their best. There's no perfect answer to this, and if you'd watched the news last week about the sale of Taylor Swift tickets, you would know that if Ticketek and places like that can't solve the problem, and that market is far larger than coins in Australia, then I won't say it's an insoluble problem, but it is a very difficult problem, and kudos to them for taking the approach of allowing dealers to distribute the coins and allocate them more fairly. We did have a few idiotic questions on release day and the day before release day of people ringing up and wanting to buy everything that we had. Clearly that's only one reason, and of course we didn't entertain any of that, and those people, good luck, you'll never be getting that off of us. Right, topic of the day was just to go back and have a look at some of the Q&A sessions from the last few months and answer some questions that I hadn't had a chance to answer. So the first one was from Miriana, who asked why her $200 coin was sweating in the folder. So $200 coins were released from 1980 through till someone's going to correct me here, 1995, I think. The first few years they actually released the $200 coins in little PVC folders. PVC, polyvinyl chloride, PVC is a hard plastic, but if you put softeners in it, chemical softeners in it, then it does become pliable. The only issue with both PVC and the softeners in them is that they do degrade over time, and often that degradation leaves deposits on coins, and that's typically known as sweating. So you'll see PVC mint sets and PVC $200 coins and PVC albums. Often the coins come out of those with a residue on them. In time that residue will turn green and it can combine with water in the atmosphere, become acidic and affect the surface of the coin. It's probably not going to affect a $200 coin, but it will certainly affect silver and copper nickel and things like that. So that's why your $200 coin was sweating, Miriana. Craig asked 4 months ago when I thought the coloured $2 market was going to crash. Well, Craig, it certainly has had a fair old downturn in the last couple of months, and I did talk about that a couple of weeks ago where we looked at some prices of things and how they'd changed. Peter Andrews had an article along a similar line in the latest edition of his independent coin news. We've certainly sold some $2 items here in the store for less than what we've paid for them, because we bought them 4 or 5 months ago at the peak of the market, and we don't make the margins that a lot of people think we do, and sometimes the prices don't have to change very much for us to be making a loss on things. So while it hasn't crashed, Craig, I do feel like a lot of the heat has gone out of it, and I would say that that's probably across most of the sort of low value items, mid value items in coins at the moment. And when I say low and mid value, I mean maybe less than $200. We've seen a real slowdown in that area in the last couple of months, just in the number of people through the front door and sales of that sort of stuff on our website. So while it hasn't crashed, it certainly has gone down. Greg asked where I see the paper decimal market in 20 years. Now, Greg, I think the paper decimal market still has some value in it. I feel like a lot of the notes are a little bit underappreciated. And that's because the availability of truly uncirculated paper decimal notes is very small. Very small. I've said it a few times here before, the one thing that surprised me in here the most is how many paper decimal notes we get coming in. I mean, we get hundreds of them. I just cannot believe how many we get. And how many are uncirculated? 1 in 500, if we're lucky. If we're lucky. And if we take out the Johnston Stone and Johnston Fraser, Johnston Stone $1 and Johnston Fraser $5, then that would be maybe 1 in 1,000. We get very few early paper decimals, and when I say early, I mean prior to 1976, that are truly uncirculated. When they do come in, usually they are in a collection. Very rarely do the notes that grandma or grandpa or aunties and uncles have put aside in the 1970s, very rarely are they truly uncirculated. And when I say that, I mean they've always got some sort of fold in them. Even when people swear they don't have a fold in them, they've got a fold in them. So I think, if you can pick up early pre-1976, 77 decimals in truly uncirculated grades at a decent price and put them away, then maybe in 20 years there could be value there. The other thing to look for is some of the paper first and last prefixes, which are incredibly hard to find. We get very few of them. So that's what I'd be looking at for paper decimals. They're very pretty things and remarkably hard to find in truly uncirculated condition. Someone asked, and I didn't get a name for this one, why the 1931 dropped Indian penny is rarely mentioned. So if you watched the sort of 10 minutes ago when I was talking about the 1930 penny, we did talk about the obverse side of that being struck with an Indian die. In 1931, most of the coins were struck with a London die. A very few of them were struck with an Indian die. The reverse of the coin sometimes shows a dropped 1 in the date, so the 1931, the 1 is a bit lower. The combination of that dropped 1 and an Indian obverse die is probably the scarcest penny die combination, or very close to it anyway. It is a very hard coin to find. There is someone watching today that's found a few of them, but in low grades they sell for 3,000 or 4,000. They certainly are a lot scarcer than 1930 pennies. Why? Thank you, Charles. That was your question. Thank you, Charles, for asking that one. Why aren't they mentioned? I think it's simply because it is harder to pick them, and that the 1930 penny has been part of Australian coin folklore since perhaps the late 1940s at the earliest, maybe mid 1960s. So that's probably why. It's purely historical reasons more than anything else, and it is, for varieties and die combinations, it is difficult to explain them to collectors who aren't necessarily as interested in learning the finer details of things, and that probably adds to the lack of value or interest to it in the market. So I'd love to find one day. I do put aside every 1931 penny that comes through here. We've found a few Indian aligned ones, but no Indian dropped ones. So yeah, really interesting variety. Thank you for asking that question, Charles. Peter says that according to Mint records, less than 1,000 were struck. Thank you, Peter, for sharing that with us. John asked if uniface was a used term in Australian coin collecting. Yes, uniface just means one face. It's just derived from Latin. Uni is just one. And it means a coin that only has a design on one side. Now, there are a number of ways that could happen. The first is that when a coin or metal is struck, they only install a design with a pair of dies with a design on one side, so they have a blank die on one side and a die with a design on it on the other. So when the coin or metal is struck, you only end up with a design on one side of it and it being flat on the other. Another way that it could happen is that a blank injects itself in between the coin being struck and the die, so that you end up with a blank on one side and a struck design on the other. Another could be a capped die, where the capped die doesn't have a design. Perhaps it was struck against a blank, or perhaps it was has been struck so many times that any brockage design there is removed. So uniface is definitely a term in Australian coins as far as I'm concerned, John. I'm not sure why you would think it wouldn't be, but it certainly is. Right, the last question that I was going to cover today was, does PCGS grade a sequence of notes or only singles? They do grade bundles of US notes, I do know that, and they put them in a special holder. As far as I know, they don't grade bundles of any other countries yet, and I've never seen more than one note in a PCGS holder. So, as far as I know, if you want to get a sequence graded, you have to pay a grading fee for each one, and if it's 10 notes, you get 10 different holders. Peter says, an obverse ground off for coins such as 1937 patterns. Well, if the design is ground off, it's essentially a blank die, so I was kind of bundling all that in together. Thank you, Peter, for sharing that with me. Now, there was a question up here which I will ask if I can find it. Here we go. Patrick says, looking at the new fee for Women's World Cup $1 coin, if I hold it so the player is standing straight and turn it, the Queen's head is sideways. Is it an error, or Patrick, I'd say they're all meant to be like that, because if no one's recorded, well, I don't know. I'll have a look and get back to you. I won't say without checking, but I suspect they're all supposed to be like that. Right, thank you everyone for watching today, and thank you for persevering through the technical problems at the start of the video there. As always, if you've got any questions that you want answered, please feel free to email them through to me, or send us a Facebook message, or give us a call, or whatever it is that you want to do. And as always, happy collecting everyone. I hope you have a great week, and we'll be back the same time next week. Bye for now.